you, everybody. I hope you're keeping well. It's getting harder and harder, I think, to keep our minds and bodies together as this lockdown is progressing. So I'm hoping that today's session can, give us a little bit of insight into understanding ourselves a bit better, so that we're able to feel happier in ourselves and also maybe create some balance in the mind. So I'm just going to switch to gallery view because it helps me to. Right, that's it. Seeing a few faces helps. So today's topic is really about understanding the mind a little bit better as a means to be able to develop our well-being from all sides. And particularly today, we'll be focusing also on spiritual well-being. Now, I think one thing I've noticed is over the last 2 months, there've been more out there on the internet, through social media, in the news, on using things like meditation, the power of positive psychology, like forgiveness, kindness, having a good strong routine, daily exercise, all ways to kind of deal with, the pressure of not really having much choice about how we leave the house, when we leave the house. And for many of you may be finding that, as our days have maybe slowed down, or we've been left much more to manage our own time, because we don't have the structure of leaving the house day to day, or we don't have the structure placed on us by the outside world, you may be finding that your mind is getting a little bit more noisy, right? There might be stuff coming up that maybe we keep our busy lifestyle or our work or even our busy leisure time as a way to distract ourselves from, some of the challenges that our mind might throw up for us. Because, our mind is like a storehouse. Whatever we experience day to day, whatever we hear, whatever we see, whatever interactions we have, we're connecting with them on different levels. And those things that are very conscious, we will process, we will kind of unpack them, digest, and decide what we're going to do with it. But a lot of what we're exposed to, the mind still absorbs, even if it's, even if we don't pay attention to it, so we're all sitting in rooms, we're sitting perhaps in your homes, and I see some of you in your gardens, and you're listening to my voice, you're looking at my image, you're perhaps looking at your own image and maybe the images of other people. But in the background, there are so many sounds, there are other fragrances and odors, there are other things which are there visually, there are lots of sensations on your skin, the sensations of your clothes, the sensation of the air around you. So there's lots and lots of stimuli and things going on. You might be hearing chatter in the background. And the point I'm trying to make is, when we're exposed to anything, although there are things we focus on, the things that we focus on, yes, we can break down and choose how we're going to digest. But everything else leaves an impression, because our mind has the conscious layer, it has also then a subconscious layer and an unconscious layer. I kind of liken it to an ocean, right? When you're at the surface of the ocean, it's very easy to dip in to what's going on in the surface. The surface is like exploring the surface of the ocean is like going and snorkeling. You don't need any particularly technical equipment, a pair of goggles and a snorkel will do. You don't even need to be a strong swimmer. Even little kids, they can do it at the surface. You can have a look at the wildlife that's there. So this is a conscious mind. It's really easy to access. It's easy to work with. And then you've got the subconscious, which is more like scuba diving. You need like extra equipment for that. And you have to prepare for it. You have to be a slightly stronger swimmer. And there's certain conditions you need to be able to go and scuba dive. And what you're seeing there is, not too different from what's on the surface of the ocean, but perhaps it's been buried a little deeper because it's happened a long time ago, or you perhaps weren't focusing on it so much. And it doesn't tend to creep around and swim around at the surface of the mind. So, to access that in terms of relating it to real time, what's in our subconscious often comes up if we are under stress, trauma, under hypnosis, very relaxed. We may be familiar with the term, the Freudian slip. What we're actually feeling, we might be keeping down, but somehow or another, it comes out in a conversation, perhaps because we're vulnerable, or somebody said something that triggered us. And then finally, last but not least, we've got this unconscious part of the mind. And the unconscious part of the mind takes up the vast majority. If you look at it, we only use about 10% of our mental, capacity and mind space in terms of what's available and accessible to us day to day. And the rest of the 90% is split between subconscious and unconscious. And unconscious, if we stick to this, I guess, ocean model, it's really, I call it David Attenborough land. Okay, it's the place where, if you watch one of David Attenborough's documentaries on the ocean and sea life, I remember one particular one where he spends, a few episodes looking at the area of the ocean where actually sunlight doesn't even reach. It's so dark that even the, the sea life that's there looks very unusual. It doesn't compare to really anything or any part of the ocean where sunlight does reach. And you need very special equipment to get down there. So what's accessed in our unconscious tends to be, things which will come up perhaps when we're dreaming, and the kind of dreams you might get will be, and we may have all experienced some bizarre dreams where we couldn't really make sense of what was going on. It almost seemed symbolic. And even the creatures or things that came on, I was like, this is not something I deal with day to day, what's going on. But the relationship these three layers have is that all these impressions and all these things that we're exposed to, whether we're consciously exposed to them or unconsciously taking it in, they aggregate, they accumulate. And the bigger the aggregate, the more we repeatedly do see, hear, or expose to something, the greater that experience, again, looking at this model of the ocean, you look at water, you look at oxygen bubbles, right? It's almost like these bubbles of experience and thought are created. The bigger they get, the more likely that they are to pop to the surface. Okay, so that's why, as we go throughout our life, we're always met with challenges, pressure, our own anxieties and difficulties, and then also the difficulties and stresses and joys from our loved ones. And through various incidences and life events where we're shaken and things can come up to the surface, which we may not have been aware of previously, and they may even surprise us. So this whole idea of, trying to engage with practices which help our well-being mentally, physically, and spiritually can sometimes be interrupted, or it may be difficult to get started. And so a lot of this is to do with the nature of the mind and the stuff that can come up and the way we process things. And plus our previous experiences, some of them just condition us a particular way, and we may not know why we behave and react to certain situations the way we do, both the helpful and the unhelpful. We've all got strengths, we've all got vulnerabilities. So one model I find helpful in terms of where is the relationship between my nature, the nature of my mind, which is that it's very vast and a lot of it I can't access on demand, and where do I sit in all of this? Because it would be really nice if I could get my mind to work with me rather than against me. Okay, and this is something we find true to whether we're starting on a spiritual path or whether we, are just trying to get through the day, right? Isn't it much easier when our mind's on our side? One of the models that's really helpful is actually from the Bhagavad Gita itself. I know some of you might be familiar with this book already, and in Bhagavad Gita actually has a very good description of where we sit in relationship to our mind. We in terms of our essence, that aspect of ourselves, which some people call the spirit, soul, the term essence. I like to use the term essence because it's like an essential part of ourselves. It gives life to the body and the mind. And also, this essence, one of the most basic ways of experiencing our essence, before even getting into any philosophical description of it, is that it's almost like a witness consciousness, a part of ourselves or who we are, independent of how the world sees us, independent of the ever-changing mind, independent of the ever-changing body, and independent of actually how our situation changes all the time. So this relationship is about how it's described is that actually we have our senses, 5 working senses, which are constantly, engaging, detecting, experiencing, and there's always something stimulating them. And then the next closest thing in terms of the model of this kind of complete sense of self is the mind. The mind is seen as a processor. Okay, the mind's there to almost like, okay, I'm going to take in everything that senses are sending me, and I'm going to just process it. Okay, some will be sitting there in the conscious, some in the subconscious, like I said, and some will just go there into the unconscious. What do I need right now? What might I need later? What am I just going to put back as a filing cabinet? And then superior to the mind is something that, you know, our ability to not just process, but our ability to discriminate. What do I want when? Okay, when do I want to dip into what's accessible immediately and what's accessible a bit later? And this is our intelligence. So our ability to discriminate is described as our intelligence. And then what's superior to our intelligence is us, as the essence, as the life force, as spirit, as soul. So ultimately, you know, healthiest, happiest life is when we are both able to make our decisions and utilize our mind to work for us rather than against us. You know, we don't want to be dragged around by everything that pulls us, because there are constantly pulls, right? There are demands on our time, there are demands on our personal resources, there are demands on our emotions, and also demands on, you know, so many of our external resources. So the mind can get really locked into fear, this fear and worry and anxiety that, do I have enough? You know, how do I work within my limits? So expanding on this model, the Gita also talks about how, you know, one of the ways to, I guess, bring the mind into balance is to look at all four of these areas: the senses, the mind itself as a processor, the intelligence as a discriminator, and then, you know, ultimately us as an essence. And if we look at the senses in terms of what's the best way to keep our senses in balance, is to actually, you know, we hear about routine, we hear about schedule, we hear about, you know, bringing our senses into balance through a healthy diet and loving relationships. So there's this idea of, okay, if we keep the senses in balance and keep our routine good, it's a way of keeping the mind balanced. And we understand this through the science of mind-body medicine as well, and brain health, because there is definitely a biological aspect to the mind. You know, there's a psychological, biological, spiritual aspect, but the brain health is important. And sometimes we can find that if we go down the spiritual route, we may neglect the brain health. But simple things like not getting enough sleep or good quality sleep, or not eating well or regularly, they can have a huge impact on our mind and our mental state. So this idea of senses and our externals and routine, this is very important. Then superior to the mind, we look at this intelligence. So if our intelligence is our ability to discern and discriminate, what's that discernment and discrimination based on? A lot of it's based on our knowledge and our understanding. So what do we feed our intelligence with? If any of us ever want to change a habit, whether that habit's to improve our spiritual practice or that habit's to a new habit we want to form for our health and well-being, just simply wanting to do it is often not enough. We need almost like some education around how, so that when our mind and senses are pulled in that, you know, the direction of the cravings, or to break that habit or go back to old habits, our intelligence has something to come back with, right? Nobody gives up smoking just because they want to, that's it. We've got to have some, you know, even those who can go, okay, right, I'm going to stop tomorrow. There's something in the intelligence there, some discernment, some ability to actually hold on to and argue with the urges of the senses and the mind. So spiritualizing the intelligence or keeping the intelligence strong is, you know, very, very important for keeping the mind balanced. And then finally, the mind itself. What is it that brings peace and calm to the mind? You know, the mind is often described as a wild horse. Right? There's a description in the Gita. It's like a chariot, and the 5 working senses are like 5 horses. And any one of those senses, if it gets distracted, it can just pull the mind away. That's how fickle the mind can be. The mind itself, also, one model is looking at it like a wild horse. How do you tame a wild horse? How do you calm it down? And we've talked about kind of holding the head and tail end of the horse, right? Through the kind of regulation of the senses and spiritualizing the intelligence. But the horse itself, if that mind is not kind of calmed, then you can let go. You know, our senses go off all the time. Our regulation goes off all the time. We also, you know, aren't always able to nourish our intelligence. It's sometimes hard for us to read and hear all the time. So it's important that that horse itself inherently needs to be calmed down. So what's the tranquilizer, I guess, for the mind? What is it that keeps it calm? And we often hear about, I'm sure you're familiar with that mantra, the idea of meditation. And many people find meditation calming. Some people find meditation difficult. Okay, and I know when I first started meditating, I found it difficult because I'd find my mind going everywhere. Okay, the one time that I'd want to sit still and make it quiet, that would be the time that I would find that my mind would start thinking about everything else except coming into the present moment. So there are probably many different types of meditation. Some of you may have tried breath meditation, you may have tried visualizations, maybe you've tried some things to help you sleep. Some of you might already be doing a practice of mantra meditation, because mantra, we understand, means to free the mind, and free the mind of the things that I guess impede it and block it. But again, mantra meditation can be difficult if our mind's running in many different directions. And what we can find is that actually we may get put off doing the things that are good for our spiritual well-being, doing the things that are good for our mental and physical well-being, like meditation, because we're not able to center ourselves. And, in this regard, I've tried lots of different meditation techniques, both personally and also had a lot of experience with working on different types of meditation for different purposes with clients I work with, patients I work with in my clinics, to varying degrees and different types of mental health issues, right down to, of course, just day-to-day meditation practice. And whilst each different type of meditation is good for different purposes, what I find is breath meditation is a good way to actually calm ourselves, because what happens is it works in a very organic way with our body and our brain health, but it also works with our life force and our essence, because breathing is something we do automatically, right? And because we breathe automatically, we automatically also then think that I must be breathing well. Now, what happens is when we're stressed, when we're under pressure, one of the first things all of us probably notice is that our breathing becomes shallow. You found yourself being so intensely focused on your work that you've had to catch yourself and just take a deep breath, right? That can happen. And, this is a sign that it indicates that actually when we are under pressure, we tend to breathe very shallow. What that ends up doing is it perpetuates our stress response. And when our stress response is perpetuated, adrenaline is not just raised, but it's kept high. So even when the stressor is removed, we're still in stress mode. Okay, our mind's still ruminating, our breathing isn't of good quality, and that keeps that adrenaline going around. It doesn't help our body to relax, it doesn't help our mind to relax. So what breath work allows us to do is, the idea around breath meditation is that we harness the power of deep, slow breathing. And when we harness the power of deep, slow breathing is the opposite of what happens in the fight or flight adrenaline stress response. And so our brain kicks in and goes, oh, hang on a minute, you're breathing slowly. So if you're breathing slowly and deeply, the stress is gone, the problem's gone. So adrenaline response switches off. And as the adrenaline response switches off, the rest of our body and our brain and our mind starts to also then get out of that fight, flight, or freeze mode. So taking advantage of our natural ability, our natural tool, breath, okay, is a really good way to actually be almost a precursor to spiritual well-being, almost a precursor to engaging in spiritual activities, or even other good habits that we might have or might want to develop. It's a good way to prepare before you read. It's a good way to prepare before you sit down to give a presentation, for example. And it works very, very quickly. And there's lots and lots of different types of breathing exercises. There's 5-finger breathing, there's window box breathing. But I'm going to today focus on something known as a yogic type breathing. It's called Anulom Vilom. It takes advantage of this idea of alternate nostril breathing. And what this does, again, physiologically, is it balances breath work between the left and right sides of our lungs, but also the left and right side of our brain. And also breath is very closely linked into our life force. So, there's even, descriptions in the Vedic texts which speak about how our lifespan and life force is related to a certain number of breaths. So the more slowly and deeply and consciously we breathe, the more we harness and preserve our life force. Before we go into the exercise, I'm just wondering if people have questions before we do the exercise, because I'm going to work through this breathing meditation with you. I'll show you how to do it, then I'll ask you to close your eyes so that when you do hear me instruct you, you have some mental picture of what it looks like. But before we do that, if there's any comments or questions, because I've been speaking for 25 minutes now. I didn't realize how long I've been speaking for. So yeah, anything you want to share or clarify, because I've introduced quite a few perhaps new concepts. Any questions? I'm going to also have a look if anything's come through on the chat room. Okay, nothing here. If anybody wants to unmute or put their hand up and ask a question directly, I'm very happy for that. I'm just going to scroll through. Sahil, I don't know if anything's come through to you.
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment? Okay, it seems that people are keen to get into the exercise then. All right, so if I could ask you to just take a couple of minutes, just find a comfortable place to sit, and you can sit cross-legged on the floor, or you can sit in a chair. If you're sitting in a chair, it's important both feet are on the ground, okay? It helps to ground us. Also, it helps us to have a nice straight back, okay, have a good posture. And in this exercise, what I'm going to first of all talk you through is just show you how to just breathe deeply and slowly. Okay, most of the time when I first introduce meditation and breath meditation in particular to people, and I ask them to show me a nice deep breath, they'll go, that's actually quite a shallow breath. It's really noisy, and it's really noisy because it's very fast. That's not a deep breath. It's like our lungs are like balloons. If you blow up a balloon, it's rare we go, if we do that, very little air gets into the balloon, right? We often have to apply constant pressure. It's a slow but forceful, steady breath we apply when we blow a balloon. So same with breathing in deeply. Even if we're just regularly, just day-to-day breathing, want to take a few moments, rather than go, which makes people quite lightheaded. Very fast, rapid breathing makes us lightheaded. And it's one of the reasons why people give up on breath meditation is they feel lightheaded. So if you watch me, and I'm going to just do a couple of slow, deep breaths, just in through the nose and out through the mouth. And what you'll notice is there's no noise. And one of the reasons there's no noise is because I'm going very slowly and very deeply. And by very deeply, I mean literally our lungs run from here, our apex, right down to below, just below, slightly above our rib cage, the bottom part of our rib cage. That's quite a big length there, so they can expand to quite big. Same with expulsion. When we exhale, a lot of the air at the base of our lungs is just dead air. It's full of carbon dioxide. So it just sits there doing nothing. So we have all that capacity we can use, both in the inhalation and exhalation, because whatever we exhale, we can then refill. So I'm just going to show you just in through the nose and out through the mouth before we reach the alternate nostril. It's just so you can see what it would look like and sound like, even for yourselves. That was just one breath in and out. Okay, so you might find initially when you do that, your lungs might feel a bit stiff. Like, oh my gosh, I'm really stretching them. So you can kind of stop and start a little bit with the breathing in it. So it's important we do in through the nose and out through the mouth. Okay, and this is just, we're going to do a few breaths like that just to get the body relaxed and get used to this idea of deep breathing. And then we'll switch over to this alternate nostril breathing. Now, if any of you have sinus problems, if any of you have a deviated septum or blocked nose right now, you might not want to do the alternate nostril. Just stick with doing in through the nose and out through the mouth. This alternate nostril breathing, there's lots of techniques. If any of you have done it before, you might have been told you inhale for a certain amount of time, you hold your breath, then you exhale. Because I don't know any of your medical conditions, you're not supposed to do that if you have high blood pressure or you know, anything which might be creating pressure up here, or if you're pregnant. So it's better you know, for most people, I just give them that we're going to go in through the one nostril and out through the other nostril. So I'm going to show you the alternate nostril breathing. We're just going to be using our thumb, and either you can use your ring finger or your middle finger. This is the motion you were going to be doing, okay? And what I'm going to ask you to do after we've done some in through the nose and out through the mouth is I want to ask you to take your right thumb, place it on your right nostril, and with your mouth closed, take a deep breath in through this nostril, and I'll count you in for 6 seconds. And when you hit the top and you've inhaled, you switch over and you breathe out through the right, and that will be for 6. And from the same side, I'll say breathe in from the same side for 6. When you've done that, we'll switch over again, and it will be out for 6, in for 6. Now, if you find, I mean, 6 seconds tends to fit most people. What you might find is you can last longer. There'll come a point where I'll say to you, okay, now you breathe yourself with your own count, but just keep it 6 or more. Because often when people go less than 6, they start to get lightheaded because it's too quick. So let's all just start, if that's okay, if there's no questions. Any questions on that? I'm just going to start talking you through. So first of all, let's close our eyes. Have your palms facing upwards. Nice straight back. We're just going to start with some slow, deep breath in through your nose, and again, slow and controlled, like I mentioned before. And as you feel your lungs really filling up, take them to a fuller capacity as you can without being uncomfortable, and gently breathe out through your mouth. Again, try and control it, and exhale slowly. And expel as much air as you can without feeling like you're suffocating. And again, naturally in through the nose. Nice and deep and slow, and out through the mouth. And in through the nose. And out through the mouth. And again, really expand those lungs. And as you breathe out, I want you to relax your jaw and your head and neck. And drop your shoulders and in through the nose again. And as you breathe out this time, relax your spine slowly, starting at the top. And as you go down to the mid-spine and lower spine. In through the nose. And as you breathe out through the mouth, let go of the tension in your shoulders and your arms, upper arms, wrists, elbows. Let your fingers relax. And through the nose. Nice and deep, and as you exhale slowly through your mouth, relax and let your bottom sink into your chair or onto the floor. Your upper thighs relax. In through the nose. And out through the mouth. And as you release and exhale, relax your calves, your ankles and your toes. And through the nose, nice and slow, nice and steady, nice deep breath. And as you gently exhale through the mouth, just do a quick body check, make sure you're not holding any tension anywhere. Now I want you to take your right thumb on your right nostril, and with your mouth closed, we're going to breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and switch over. Place your middle finger on your left nostril, release the right hand, breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and breathe in from the same side, 2, 3, 5, 6, and switch over, thumb down, in, sorry, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and breathe in. And switch over, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in through the same side, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, thumb down, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and inhale. 6, and switch. 3. And inhale. Keep your mouth closed. It's important this happens through the nose. 6, and switch over. And inhale. Switch over. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale. 5, 6. Switch over and out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale. 6. Switch over. 4, 6. Inhale. Now those of you who can go longer than 6 seconds and you've got an idea of this exercise, continue. Switch over and you can continue at your own pace. But for the rest of you, I'll keep counting to 6. And inhale. 5, 6. Switch. Inhale. Switch over and exhale. Inhale. Switch over and exhale. Now, if you're finding that, so carry on with your own pace. If you're finding that your nose is running, it's getting blocked up, it's okay to pause and blow your nose, because this can happen when you're doing this exercise, that it really starts to decongest the upper airways, and you may want to clear that out and go back to doing the exercise. But please continue for a few more breaths. If you notice your shoulder getting tense or your forehead frowning, be conscious of that. It's not meant to be a mass exercise of concentration. The whole idea is your focus just needs to be on the breath. Just be present, relax your body. And when you've done one more breath, come back into the room. We did that for a very short time, but hopefully it was enough time to give you some idea of how to do the exercise. What I suggest is that you try this exercise first thing in the morning and last thing at night. The best time to do it is before you've eaten. So in the morning after you've freshened up into the bathroom, perhaps even after your shower. Sit down, do this, 10 breaths in and out on each side. And again, at night time just before bed. Because what this does, it really calms and quietens the mind. It switches off our stress response. you want to do this before you start any other type of meditation, or before you start reading anything, or any other spiritual practice, this is a good exercise to do. One of the reasons we say not to do it on a full stomach is because we're expanding the lungs so much. A full stomach can sometimes, actually interfere with that and might make you feel a little sick. The key thing is keep your breaths deep and slow to facilitate this whole, harnessing life force in a steady way. And also making the most out of our lungs. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. You'll find your breaths last longer, both the in-breath and the out-breath. You'll find your mind becomes much steadier. Any practices you do will be enhanced. It'll be easier to be attentive. Even with mantra meditation, the mind will be more focused and clear. And it's easier for us to move from a head space to a heart space and connect much more with our prayer and meditation, with our reading, with our reflection. And even difficult moments throughout the day. I mean, I give this out to pretty much all my patients who are interested in doing this kind of practice. It helps their mindfulness. They often find they make less use of kind of medicines that help to sedate them or calm them down. I've had good results with it, both with people who struggle with mental health problems and those who just, don't struggle with mental health problems, but, life has its ups and downs. Any questions or comments either about the exercise or what we were speaking about before, some of the models of the mind, or any challenges you're having?
Dr. Chetna Kang, so we've got a few questions that have been sent to me privately.
Okay.
Maybe I can share the first one.
Okay.
So one teacher asked, how does someone overcome a bad start in terms of routine during this quarantine period? What tips would you have for improving our routine?
Can you say that one more time?
They said, how does someone overcome a bad start in terms of our routine during quarantine? And do you have any tips for improving our routine now?
Yeah, so it's never too late to change our routine. A good routine is good for us, as we know. I would say don't try and change too many things at the same time. One thing I've commonly had fed back to me is people have gone on this kind of like, okay, we're in lockdown, it's time to transform our life completely. It's impossible to change everything at the same time. And what it ends up doing is setting us up for failure, because we're not going to be able to change everything at the same time. So what I try and get, one thing that's helpful is to get out of this consciousness that this is the time to change everything, but actually see maybe the lockdown period as a beginning. So pick the areas of, I wouldn't pick more than 1 or 2 areas of your routine to work on first. All right. And then when you pick those 1 or 2 areas, identify which are going to be most beneficial for you. Okay, so for some it might be sleep, some it might be exercise, some it might be eating. For some it might be they need to get back on with, having some routine around their spiritual practices. So it's going to vary for us. So I would just pick 1 or 2. And then in terms of setting ourselves a timeline to achieve change, even if that timeline lasts beyond lockdown, that's actually will help us in terms of the positive psychology of it, that actually I have more time than just this time to change everything. And then you can then create the next steps. And the next steps really need to be realistic in the sense that for you, the next step is going to be different to another person. So let's just say, I'm going to give an example. I'll often have people saying to me, look, I've gotten into a bad habit of going to bed after midnight. I'm going to bed after midnight, 12, 1, 2 o'clock. And even if I get enough hours of sleep, I'm tired in the morning. And one of the reasons this is because we have got an internal body clock as well as the external one. But our internal body clock very much works with nature. We've got fixed times that our body releases and our brain releases certain hormones which are good for us, and others that literally get parked and sleep because they should be around later in the day. And what happens is if we don't go to sleep at that time, our brain gets a message that, okay, don't release growth hormone or, any other hormones which are there for repair and rejuvenation, because we haven't gone to bed in that window. So I'm thinking, right, I'm not feeling rejuvenated. I need to get back to going to bed by 10. And we try and make big jumps. Making big jumps just doesn't work. I say to, especially with sleep, I say to people, just try to gain back no more, make adjustments of no more than 20 minutes every few days. Now, granted, it might take you then a month to get back to a decent routine, but it will be more sustainable. because sleep schedule, I mean, there's lots of, I did a whole workshop on how to create better sleep habits and how to sleep well. And the key thing, the first thing we should really do is look at our sleep schedule. Because once we're working with our body clock, then all the other things we put into our routine work much better. So whatever it is you're adjusting, I've just given sleep as an example, but whatever it is we're adjusting, go step by step and look at your next realistic step for you based on where you're at right now. So I don't know, hopefully that helps.
Thank you so much. And just to say, we have about 10 minutes left. So if anyone wants to ask, we have 3 questions already in the chat. If anyone else wants to ask, please do shout. So one question was, why does it seem that I can breathe in a lot longer than I can breathe out? Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, and I've seen another question come up as well. Why did it seem so some of you are going to find it easier to breathe in than to breathe out, and some will find it easier to breathe out than breathe in. This is again due to practice, elasticity. This is one of the reasons why I try and keep the count the same for the in and out breath, because with practice, whichever it is that we're weaker on will be strengthened. Also, sometimes if you have underlying conditions like asthma, for example, the issue with asthma isn't a problem of inhalation. The issue with asthma is a difficulty with exhaling. So you may be finding that also, particularly when lungs are stiff. Also, we are more used to breathing in deeply. We become very unconscious of how we breathe out. And it can also, yeah, thanks, Alicia. Yeah, so, and also breathing out is something we need to put in a little bit more effort, because so much of the lung capacity that's wasted is right down the bottom. So it needs a little bit more of an extra oomph. Is that okay? I think there was one more question. Are you going to?
Yeah, we've got one that I've sent you, one other one. One was from a parent. They were asking, can you give any tips and strategies about how to manage children's workload, your own workload, and all the different things going on? Because it's just everything is doubled, so they're finding it quite difficult to manage everything. So if you've got any tips for that.
Okay, can I come back to that question in 1 second? I just want to address, because this was earlier, some of us are finding it hard that we're not able to have so much personal interaction, online lessons, instead of being with children each day. Any thoughts on how we can deal with this? Yeah, it's happening to a lot of people, because although there's so much more available like this, I was saying it's so nice to see people's faces and actually seeing how they're responding, because it's like, yeah, some human experience, but we get so much more from actually even being in each other's presence, even if you're not touching another person, because we pick up on emotion and feeling and energy, even from meters away. What I would say is, with technology, there's a lot is lost. Yes, aside from buffering and delays in, communication technology, a lot can get lost because of the eye contact element. So if you go to my Instagram or Facebook, there's a whole post on it, but there's really the key things to focus on is our cameras are all in different locations on our devices. And what we have a tendency to do on a call is either look at our own face or look at the image of the person, right? If we're honest, we either look at our own face or we look at the image of the person. And what might be worth doing is, from time to time, look at the actual camera. See, I'm looking at my camera right now, and it's more likely that as me looking into my camera looks to you like I'm looking at you directly. Okay, so those of you whose faces I can see, nod please, right? It makes a difference. So be conscious of where your camera is. It is weird. If I just sat here staring at that camera, it would be weird for me as well. So that's why I do look at your pictures from time to time. So it's flip between that. The other thing is, because of the delay in sound, and because we are using technology rather than our hearing, it's important to leave a pause after we finish speaking, and maybe after the other person finishes speaking. A longer pause than we're naturally used to, and this avoids us speaking over each other. Yeah. The other thing is, again, we have a tendency to just do a headshot when we're on a screen, whereas when we're together, we see the whole body. So we pick up on physical cues. So there's that side of things. Try and have more of yourself in shot, and same with the other person. being more attentive, consciously really listening, so using the ear and sound. I mean, back in the day when we only had landlines, I think we were all much better at speaking to each other on a phone. We're better at listening and hearing, whereas sometimes we get distracted by image. If you have access to a garden or can go and see friends, you know, we are allowed to go and see people, but it's just we can't go in their homes. I mean, I've got neighbours who literally, their friends come over and their friends literally put a chair on the pavement, sit down on the pavement outside their garden. They sit in their doorway and they have a chat. So this is something perhaps you might be able to make use of. But yeah, hopefully that helps. So if we can go back to the question from the parent.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So the parent was asking that they're finding that having to help their children and do their work, and how do they manage it all, and there's a lot more stress than normal, so kind of dealing with that stress of multiple things happening.
Yeah, many of us are multitasking and doing a lot more than we would normally do, even though we're in lockdown. And I think, you know, it's easy to answer this question as a time management thing, but there are only so many hours in the day. So I think it's more about how we use that time. We all want to be supermen and superwomen and do everything amazingly and brilliantly, and we're so hard on ourselves when we don't get it right. What we often forget, I think, is that it's important, despite our commitments to others, that we make time for ourselves. And yes, it might feel like, oh my gosh, if I take half an hour out for myself, I could be using that helping the kids with their work, or cooking, or cleaning, or doing my teaching work, whatever it is, or administration. But if we give ourselves half an hour, or ideally 2 half-hour slots in the day, or 50, whatever it is you can manage, where it is for our own self-care. Okay, different aspects of our self-care, whether it's our mind, body, spirit, whatever it is, look after the different aspects of ourselves. It's really important, because if we don't replenish our storehouse, we don't replenish our stocks of resources, internal resource, then we will get burnt out. The more burnt out we get, even then the small things day to day will feel overwhelming, and our time will become harder and harder to manage. And this is a good time to actually really, you know, I mean, I've noticed one thing, and this is my experience, I'd be interested to hear others. My daughter's in secondary school, she's in year 7, and she's learned to manage her, it's kind of, I'm there to support her, but I kind of also tend to leave certain things for her to manage, even if I know that there might be a repercussion she might not be comfortable with, because she might not get it right straight away, or she might miss something, or miss a deadline. We can fear as parents that, oh my gosh, if I leave my children to their own devices, maybe they won't get to their homework on time, or they'll make a mistake. But that's okay. That's an opportunity for them to grow and learn. It's easy enough for us to, as you know, with our fears, drive things, and let fear drive things, which is why it's really important to keep the mind in balance. Is fear driving me, or am I willing to take a risk? It's not that we're neglecting the kids. If you find a kid's repeatedly making the same mistake, yeah, we can intervene and say, okay, look, you clearly need support with this. But it's important to kind of give them some breathing space, especially after a certain age, because sometimes there's no way to learn other than the hard way or through experience.